Well, I've got 2:30 on my watch, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Digital Access Committee. We are not expecting Commissioners Ward or Hayes Santos. No matter, we are a subcommittee, there are no rules on quorum, so we can proceed as if nothing were indifferent, although we will of course miss the input of our colleagues. So I would like to go ahead and start, we can adopt our agenda. We'll just go ahead and adopt it by acclamation.
All right, well, I move to adopt the agenda for today.
So we'll just, by acclamation, between the two of us. So we'll adopt the agenda. Any other comments, such effects? None? All right, very well. We're moving to our minutes. Without objection, we'll go ahead and adopt the minutes by acclamation. And next we will move into our agenda. So the first item on the agenda is item 170192, municipal broadband. This has been an ongoing topic for a while now. I was not made aware of any new updates to it. So I suppose without any input from staff, I'll pass on to the committee. Do we have any items up with any updates from
I don't have anything.
Looks like.
Yeah, Commissioner, there was a question out there about, I believe it was brought up at the county commission meetings about effectively the cost of just parts of the system, that type of thing. And I've got an excerpt from the report that I'll just hand over to you guys, because there's a fiber cost in there. You'll see just each of the components broken down. I just brought this from a capital cost perspective. That's what will get you. And so I'm not sure in what context that was brought up, but I just wanted to provide that basic information. I know the county's got this, if there's an interest in what they might have in mind to further the discussion, but just wanted to make sure that y'all have that information for next time around.
Thank you. Yes, it did come up in some of our discussions, so this is useful to have.
I guess the only thing that I would say is those parts can be highly interdependent, so but that gives you a broad idea for any discussion.
Okay. It came up in the context, if I'm remembering correctly, discussing the potential surtax that would have been brought to the ballot. But my understanding is that the county has effectively ended that discussion. So going forward, I think we're just back to where we were before that discussion even came up.
Okay.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Okay, no further comments on municipal broadband. We will go ahead and close that agenda item, and we will move into our next item, digital inclusion strategy 181067. We have had a number of research proposals brought forward on this. I was not under the impression that we asked for anything new to come back, unless I'm mistaken. But do you have any comments on that, Commissioner?
I thought we did ask for something to come back.
You did, but it won't be ready. It wasn't ready for this meeting.
Okay.
So we are working, building off of some of the research that's been done. And now we're kind of looking at the purview of the Technology and Innovation Department, what they could do to help move some of this forward, programs within the city, particularly at rec centers, but still building upon it. So nothing to report at this time, but there was a request for some follow-up, but nothing to discuss at this meeting.
And apologies, jog my memory a little bit on what we asked.
I'm going to jog my own memory then real quick, and I'll speak in general terms. I believe there was a request to look at how we could incorporate policies that foster broadband access in housing complexes. So what could be done in the context of planning and rules associated with the Department of doing. So those are discussions that we're just really kind of starting to have to build off this work. So that was one of the main focuses. And then our city Wi-Fi, that work is still kind of ongoing, working with UF, working with GrewCom, working through some technical issues, but nothing significantly new to report at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. And
and also I believe we wanted information on private apartment owners in that industry, how we So I wanted to know, have we even contacted those?
We haven't reached out yet.
Okay.
But the expectation is that you all will
Correct.
bring back in digital inclusion strategy, or at least a roadmap to creating a strategy?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I think that's where we're headed.
Right.
I think we've thrown enough darts at the board that we're ready to
Yeah.
figure out what exactly we're trying to shoot at. Okay, well, having no further discussion on that item, we will go ahead and, Commissioner, I didn't realize you'd be here today. Welcome back. Please have a seat. We have just been moving through the agenda. We are concluding our discussion on digital inclusion strategies. Basically, staff is going to return to us with a blueprint for what a digital inclusion strategy would look like, based on the research that we received from our fellows and also from input that we gave at our last meeting. So we're going to go now and move into our next item, 190284, data governance. And if I recall, we had asked for a presentation from GRU to discuss y'all's data governance. Thank you so much for being here. So by all means, take it away.
Sure. And talking to some folks and going back and looking at what data we collect from a consumer standpoint, just came up with some examples that we have that are available right now. And then we can flip these and give different offerings based on some of the same information. But we have pretty much everything available as far as consumption is concerned, with the caveat that it can be available. I believe 30 days is the magic number as far as making sure that any information gets out is not timely enough for people to establish a pattern, things like that. So I've provided as backup just a gander of what we have available currently now, and again would put in play that we can manipulate that, add columns, take away columns, filter things differently to come up with a lot of different reports.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for providing that information. Commissioners, if you wanted to jump in, I just wanted to go ahead and briefly state why this was important to me.
Sure.
So we received, do we have, we don't have it connected? Just look on our computer. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So we received a presentation from general government that essentially outlined their smart data policy, their policies for governance. So I'd like to see what are GRU's data governance policies, internal and external.
We don't have any, to be very honest with you, because the open data there was a gap between general government and GRU, to be very honest with you. We kind of came in the picture late, and what we're asked to do is develop strategies or see what we can do to get on board without overtaxing our players. We did have discussions about operational data and things like that. I guess the common idea behind that is that we don't know how much of that would be actually useful to the public.
Sure.
As far as how many times a turbine turns around to make a line or whatever. But again, we're open to all this, just with the understanding, obviously, it not being in a vacuum and knowing that there's been some problems in the past. The only thing I would want to see is a good tiered structure to make sure anything that we put out on either side is vetted, so no personal identifying information gets out, or any other sensitive, if it's sensitive or whatever, information would get out. So that's my thing.
Sure. Well, and I think that's sort of the genesis of the conversation is as we move forward on a GG data policy, it's a good opportunity for this commission, and particularly this committee, to have input on those policies in GRU, whether they exist or not right now. So you mentioned an element of what's useful to customers and all that. And that's the discussion we're having in general government, which is what kind of data is actually necessary to capture and what will actually be useful for the discharge of governmental duties. So anyway, this is a helpful first start. Commissioners, I'll get your input, but I have an idea for where I'd like us to go. But we'll go ahead and start. Commissioners, how does commissioners?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Probably last time we talked about the general government data policy. For me, I don't want a general government data policy. I don't want a GRU policy. I want a City of Gainesville data policy. So that is the direction that I would like for us to go in terms of this. So we don't have this kind of difference between the two, and I think for the public, it starts to cause issues because here they did that, and I think it just reduces confusion, and we are talking about how we can get one Gainesville and be able to have that front to our residents. So for me, I think that's a very important thing, that we have one policy, and it should work for all of our different departments in the city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and I also agree with Commissioner Hayes Santos. We should have one general policy. But what I would like to see in your data is the difference between the residential consumption usage rate versus commercial or business.
And to be clear, we can do that.
Yeah.
This is just an example of some of the things.
Okay.
But we can definitely have that there.
Okay, that's, thank you.
Okay. Well, I think you'll find I'm in agreement with you all. However, you know, the challenge that always comes with any kind of uniform policy across organizations is, of course, you know, identifying the areas where they diverge,
Mhm.
and making sure that we have separate. So, you know, what we're probably going to have to, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know the city manager's in the back, so please, if you have input into how this might proceed, you know, get my attention. But I think what we will have to do is direct our charter officers to at least begin putting together teams. So a team in GRU and a team in general government, and how they're going to come together to discuss where the data policies overlap, and then where, you know, specifically speaking, it's specifically a GRU or specifically a GG item, and how, you know, I would rather GRU write data policy for GRU on items that pertain to GRU, than, you know, vice versa. So, yeah, please go ahead.
Just to make sure we're transparent here, we both organizations already have data with kind of releasing structures through our RMLO mechanisms that we release data already. I would suggest that we kind of activate that, if not add to it a little bit, to come up with the different nuances for the different, especially for GRU. We already have a mechanism in place. We can have that stuff developed pretty quickly, I think. But like you guys were saying, I agree that it should be one global policy that fits, and then what's germane to GRU, we write things for, and it should be little small additives as opposed to, you know, rewriting the whole policy. So.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the policy, it was obviously written with just GG, not GRU in mind, based on some work the city manager done with Florida League of Cities. It speaks mainly to general high-level governance around disposition, collection, disposal, destruction, storage, at a very high level. So it won't, there are some standards that we will probably cite in it, but again, it wasn't done with a utility in mind. You know, we collect a lot of sensitive information, of course, through GPD and GFR and other places, but it was really written with smart cities in mind and general government. That being said, it probably, to Walt's point, probably won't take much to create some additional verbiage in the policy that accommodate the existence of a utility.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to add too, I think it's important that we recognize we may be talking about two different things at the same time. So we have the open data portal, which is where we want to push data out there that our neighbors can use to help better the city. So, you know, from a general government side, it may be crime stats on a block level, or it may be fire hydrant locations from a fire suppression standpoint, or things like that. On the GRU side, I can see water consumption use, electrical use, maybe not maybe we want to garner some privacy, so maybe it's on the block level versus the home level. But we ought to be looking at what type of data can we push out there to allow people to start playing and come up with ideas that are going to help improve the city. What Dan was talking about is also out there, and that is data privacy, which is the other side of this. And so I think we need to have one citywide data privacy policy that talks about what data do we push out. So for example, there may be some GRU data. The data policy that we showed you says GRU is not going to furnish that to law enforcement. right? So we can't figure out, you know, based upon electric consumption, who's had twist roads, right? Because we don't want people to think we're looking at that type of activity. And so we want to have a broad, encompassing data privacy policy that's out there as well. So I think both entities can work hand in hand on both of those, so that we have one unified method to push data out and one unified policy that the commission can ultimately adopt on data privacy.
What you saw the last meeting spoke to what the city manager was saying. It didn't say specifically it should be at the block level for this data set. It just said we should, for example, where appropriate, aggregate things to the block level to protect privacy and security. So for specific elements, it doesn't get very prescriptive down into the actual inventory. It just really espouses a set of values that we should be managing by as it relates to the management of GRU or GG's data. It's really left to the departments, to the charters.
The biggest issue in the data privacy policy is that if we are ever going to try to monetize the data we collect, sell it, okay, for revenue, it has to be a decision of the governing body. Right? So the policy clearly says that if we have sensors on streetlights and we're selling, how many blue cars are driving by the street, okay, if we sell that, we have to come to you and get approval. So,
And I would agree. I think that first and foremost, we need to recognize that there's potential value in the data. So we know that there's sensitive stuff there, but there is indeed, if not today, there could be value tomorrow. So we definitely need to put something in writing that says, hey, look, we reserve the right to bring this back. And if we say, hey, look, there is a big demand for this, we could potentially get value at it.
right, I mean, there are fiber and sensor companies that are out there willing to put the infrastructure in exchange
Just to get the
for
data.
getting the data and being able to monetize it.
But it sets that the city commission is the authority that grants that ability, that exists at that level because in many cases we are talking about people's, maybe not their own PII, their personally identifiable information, but it's data that could be construed or used to identify certain folks. So it's got a value to it, but the commission is ultimately the one that has to give that approval because it does, I think, cross a bridge into, just like the parking spaces that we charge money for. It's an asset, we have to value it, and we have to be good stewards of that resource. Data is already there in terms of an asset we have to sensitively manage.
Thank you, I appreciate that conversation.
One more thing, since
Yeah.
we're talking about the different technology, whether it be fiber or communication, it's one of the things that we have been, as a group, have been pushing forward. As we obtain these new systems and they have the capacity to do things to allow us to communicate system to system or sensor to sensor, or whether you talk about the Internet of Things or whatever, or M&M technologies, we need to make sure that we do everything to take advantage of the communication capacity so that if something has value,
Right.
we can repeat the process and quickly repeat the process as opposed to, me tying up half a team, for a $30 script just so we can produce something once. It should be,
And there's lots of potential. You may have seen this out at the show, but with all these sensors and the ability to project, if we ever get to a true 5G system, the idea that we can sell our space on towers to, let's say, Ford, who can send out updates to their navigation system by, just pushing that out on poles, and, there's a value to them to do that, and so.
We already make our traffic management system data available to Toyota and Audi. I mean, it's happening at a very basic level now, so that infrastructure can communicate with those vehicles. We've been doing it really as a kind of a bleeding edge, just to get the equipment out there so staff can learn from it, but at some point we need a repeatable approach because We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we're favoring one company over another, or only a certain class of vehicle can actually access what is really life-saving safety information. So we got to make sure that we're putting it out there in a way that it's not just a certain, you have to have a car of a certain value, or you have to live in a particular place. It has to be equitably distributed and not and available to really everybody, regardless of whether you're riding the bus, a bicycle, or you're in an expensive Audi.
How's that been?
No, Commissioner Sims wanted to jump in really quick. But
I can wait.
germane to the point.
I was just curious how it balanced with public records requesting.
That's the star that I've been putting on my notes
Yeah.
as I think through this.
Yeah, I mean, Florida public records laws are very, very descriptive with what is exempted, and everything else is very broad. So, just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess my question is, what's our next step?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking, I think we also asked for a timeline, an updated timeline. So I don't know if we're going to hear something today.
I don't think we gave them a timeline. I think we really just wanted to know where GRU was at with these discussions, and I think that we received that, at least I
It
feel
says
like I
also an
understand.
updated timeline will be discussed in January 2020. Is that?
Oh.
So, and I guess that's where I'm at. Where do we go from here?
On both items?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get the Commissioner and then we'll.
Yeah, I think on that was to look at because there was a broader discussion, not just a kind of the overarching one, but looking into kind of like the GPD stuff and all those, if I remember correctly, it was all
Okay.
tied together under this one. So it was us getting a bit of idea of what we collect now
Okay.
and trying to figure out like, is that, and then like for GPD is like, should we be doing facial recognition? Yes or no? We don't do that now, but I think it was having those kind of conversations, figuring out what are we doing and making sure kind of the public understands what we're doing, and then us as kind of the policy people overseeing the city, kind of setting those policies so we don't start to go down ways that like some cities have completely said that you can't use any facial recognition. Other cities have said go use it all you want. I think those are where we're at a point. I think technology-wise, I think we should be having those discussions.
And thanks. So, and again, that's what I'm wanting to see after today, or maybe to have some type of consensus. We've gotten the information so far from general government and GRU of what we can and cannot do from their perspective. So as a committee, what's our next step? Where are we going with this?
I think for me, at least, I think we need to give direction to both of our charter officers to begin collaborating a high-level unified policy that also incorporates discussion of the open data portal. Because I think that conversation needs to get started at the staff level. If we give direction for general government to come back with a timeline, that conversation has happened with GRU. At that point, you're going to have two things going in different directions, which is what we'd like to avoid. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess one of the things was a timeline on when would we be able to have like a discussion on, because I think I guess this covers everything on GRU in terms of what you're collecting from the consumers.
Yeah, it's a generality, but in all different kind of,
And then I know in GG, I know that was something being looked at. That's a much broader kind of things that are being collected in many different areas. I know that would take a little more time. I guess a timeline on kind of.
We have an inventory that we've been working on in the context of it's related to the open data portal. It's important to point out that not all data is open data. So we do have an inventory, and we've been prioritizing and triaging what should be open, what should not be open, using the resolution that the commission had passed. So we have an inventory. I'd love to say that it was complete, that I have full faith that it captured the waterfront, but that it does exist, and we're adding to it on a regular basis.
Go ahead.
And I guess one of them I think is important is on the GPD front. I know we brought that up in that general policy committee on, we currently are looking at every single license plate on every major road that's coming into the city. I want us to have that's a big change. I mean, that's that is a privacy that now our residents are losing. Is that people visiting? Is that I think we need to have those discussions as we kind of go further down. I think that's one of the areas we need to set policy as a commission of either we open the gates more or close the gates more in terms of what we're collecting and what are we looking at. And I think in police is one of those that's just, I think, causes a lot of worries for different people because it can be used to track a lot of things and liberty, things like that. But I think that's, I would like for us to have those discussions on what we're collecting on the police side, but yeah, I guess in terms of those things, and then what other data GFR might be collecting that could be used on these different areas in terms of how we're investigating our own.
The good thing about law enforcement is that it's all fairly standardized.
Yeah.
You know, they have to report in a particular manner. If you look at our police department versus any other police department, it's generally the same set of data. Even if you just look at a municipality, utility aside, a municipality should have, their inventory should be somewhere between 550 to 600 data sets just to pass the sniff test. It's even more specific when it comes to GPD, or I should say police and fire. So we can have I think a very detailed discussion and give you a list of what is being collected just within GPD. And then what we can do is walk through what the use case is for each one of those data sets, if you're curious. And in some cases, like I said, if it's something that we don't need to be collecting, and I can safely say there's not much, if anything, that's going to fall into that, because we typically have to pay for it to be stored somewhere, whether it's a filing cabinet or on a hard drive somewhere. We're not going to be incurring a lot of that expense just for fun. So there's a use associated with every single one of them, whether it's regulatory or operational. So I think we're happy. I can't speak for GPD. Actually, we've got David Dewey here, who just came over to be interim from GPD. It would not be hard for us to have a discussion with you about the data GPD collects, even if we spent a big chunk of one of our access meetings walking through it, talking about how GPD uses a particular data set, or maybe it collects it solely for reporting purposes because feds want to know.
Yeah, and I think your points are right. And we're not actually, we have one trailer that we're getting license plates, and then we have 2 vehicles out on the interstate that are pulling. And very aware of public records. It's everyone in the city is very aware of the size of that.
But why would they be pulling that kind of information? I guess.
So the vendors come in, they say, okay, we'll put this trailer in, and then you can find stolen vehicles. And then they get alerted to the people that are on staff, and then they can pull over the person and like, okay, we know we'll buy this trailer, and we go and we get it. And
so it actually notifies you it hits them.
Yeah. And then I believe even Public Works has some kind of license plate reading when they're going around with a code.
Parking.
Parking,
So
yeah.
Target Mobility
Right.
uses LPR for parking enforcement. We are part of a state database. It's just like tolls. I mean, you have to pay by plate for toll. It's the same way for parking. It's a convenience for us. Obviously, it makes it easier for us to enforce, much more cost effective for us to enforce. And in some cases, although a parking ticket is not a convenience for someone, a toll, being able to pay by plate for toll is a convenience for someone. So there is a state database that we are a part of that we ping against anytime we want to issue somebody a ticket.
And so I guess next year, my question is, at this point, GPD do have enough information at this moment that we can move this along and say, hey, we have this already available, this data that we're collecting, we're not using. And in the meantime, connect with GRU so we can start working cohesively and building on what we currently have and moving forward with this. Because I've heard this conversation before over and over and over again, and I'm not hearing anything new.
Yeah, we can have a detailed conversation with the committee about
I've heard
GPD data, absolutely. And you can, like I said, you go through the list, you're not going to find much that's just collected without purpose. That doesn't mean that rules don't change over time, and maybe a system collects more data than we actually use. You'll find occasional instance of that, but in most instances, that's going to be very, very benign data. It's going to be, if it's sensitive or has to be protected in any way, shape, or form, there's probably some thought that's been put into why are we collecting this? Why are we storing this? Especially in the public safety sector.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to get to, but I think one of the things is, like most everything with a purpose, but is that purpose worth the privacy that's being given up to? And that's where I want us to kind of have that discussion is, where is that line that we want to draw as a city? And then being able to craft a policy to be able to, when does that line get passed? When does that have to come to the commission? When does that just a staff decision? Because as there are more and more tools that are being created technology-wise, this is just going to get more and more open. I think we need to get somewhat ahead of that by drawing those lines of where do we want things to come back to the commission, where are we okay with staff making decisions on what. I mean, currently right now, staff can go out there and say we're going to collect every single body's face in the city and track everything. That probably should be a commission decision if we do go that route, but I want us to be able to have a policy that creates those kind of lines that are out there.
And the other thing I think that needs into is the transport of that information, whether we're going to allow people just to go to a site and download it, whether we're going to email it to someone, the responsibilities of going through to vet the data to make sure that there's nothing too sensitive to go out. Again, with, like you said, the technology changing, nowadays people have requested directly from my department portals that they can directly receive information. And when do we allow that to be set up? You know?
Yeah, I think I want to make sure we get comments from all the commissioners, but if I could just, this is a great policy discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I think these are exactly the kind of policy discussions that should be happening in the charter offices.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a committee, we should just give them direction on what we want to come back before we dive into the minutia that we're going to be debating at a later date.
Yes, so thank you. And I also wanted to go ahead and make a motion I move to have general government come back with a presentation or updated information with GRU with not GRU, with GPD and the data that they collect. And let's have a more detailed conversation based on the topics they bring back. And also have GRU come back with in addition to the businesses, add businesses to this list and have that conversation with general government cohesively and come back together with some updated information, particularly GPD information and business data for the GRU side.
I'll second that, but it's a two-part motion. So bring back a discussion on the data that GPD is collecting, and then authorize both charters to have discussions about bringing back one unified data policy.
Yeah, so on the unified data privacy policy, I think the one thing is I'd like for it to be beyond just GPD, like in terms of the parking, what we're collecting in license plates, that's the area that I'm kind of interested in, where we're actually starting to get into kind of personal data. So I don't know if I know Public Works, or I guess parking we do it, GPD, we're using that kind of stuff. I don't know if any other city departments are kind of grabbing that information, other than those two? Or?
So I don't think there is, with a few exceptions, smaller departments, every city department has some degree of personally identifiable information that they have to be careful of. There's a smaller subset that have HIPAA data.
Yeah.
I mean, those have standards for the most part that we can point to. The draft policy we put in front of you last time actually points to some of those standards. All it says, and it's again high level, it says that we will adopt a NIST standard, an ISO standard, some standard that says how we will handle PII. HIPAA obviously is regulated separately, but almost every department has, at least at some point, either could be accessing it, because PII is very broad.
So I guess I'm looking more for where kind of technology is changing quickly in those fronts, where you could drive by and use facial recognition or license plate recognition or all of these kind of things like that, where I know there's like a lot of Parks Direct emails and stuff like that. I don't think that's as much as...
If you want to talk about the future, might I suggest maybe for either the next Digital Access Committee or the one after, that we get a presentation from the Future Privacy Forum. It's a national organization that we are a part of, that the city is a member of. It doesn't cost anything. We have a call. There's a call every other week where municipalities from around the country discuss exactly what you're talking about, technology that they are thinking about buying, new policies that they're considering or that they're seeing from around the country. They have a few folks that watch this at a national level. I think they'd be happy to do a video kind of workshop, so not even a workshop, that's got some type of video presentation. I think they're based in DC or Seattle, one of the two. They can really talk about the landscape of what's happening around the country, and I would love to have them involved. UF Law also could, I think, be, I know you don't work for the law school, and it's a very big, UF is a very big organization, so I don't expect you to speak for the law school, but getting UF involved, I think they probably have, I would hope, some degree of kind of intellectual interest in participating, because there are going to be some things that, to be honest with you, no one has answered. We can speculate, but you're going to hear, it's just going to be a lot of us chatting around the table about the what ifs in the future. And I wouldn't expect the city attorney's office to know everything that's happening around, smart city data collection and how it applies to laws written 15 years ago, unless you want to. Some of it, I think, would be great joint UF city projects around what happens for our autonomous vehicle, which we now have a waiver to operate. It's collecting data that we've never touched before. So, there will be questions that I would love for example, the law school to do a project on. That could, I think, add not only to our knowledge, our understanding, but really, at a national level, add to the total body of knowledge around smart city data.
Yeah, and I would like for us to go to find where is that line that is going to have to come back to the commission to be able to move into a new technology or not, or where are we going? I know that's tough. It's tough, but I mean, like, is facial recognition something that should come to the commission or not? I know some cities have brought out their commissions. So I think that is a kind of discussion where I would like to go in terms of where do we draw our lines on ourselves, because we could do a lot as a government, but we put in our restrictions on what we do.
So what did you want to add to the motion?
I guess it was looking at not just GPD, but looking at like the park things that are similar to park does and things like that.
How about you could describe it, add to an upcoming meeting, because I don't know what the schedule is for some of these other groups, but at an upcoming meeting, a look at trends associated with municipal data privacy as it relates to smart cities.
Yeah, I guess I would also like I guess trends, but yeah, where does GPD see, what do you see are the next things you might start collecting, that you want to collect?
Yeah, well, and
that's I guess in that.
There's going to be that kind of stuff. I mean, Vision Zero is a great example where we're talking about using new equipment. It collects more data. I think it processes the tickets automatically. I don't know if we ever got those radar guns that automatically issue the ticket, but we never bought those.
Let me know where.
Well, I think this is a really good discussion, and I'd be happy to get more information. To be honest with you, I'm not really interested in pseudo discussions about pseudo technology that has or has not been invented yet. So, or is practically implemented. Not interested in that. What I want us to figure out is one data governance policy that addresses high-level governance and open data portals, and as the commissioner mentioned, what are the trigger points for bringing back collection technology purchases to the commission, and where do we make those decisions? Where do you all make those decisions? That's it. We'll worry about all that other stuff at a later date. So anyway. Good with the motion? Okay. Any public input? I don't see any members of the public here today, but as always, more than welcome to take public input. So seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. Just as a point, yeah, go ahead.
Do we want to put a time table?
I would say let's have it come back in February.
Okay.
Yeah.
February.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Seeing none, we will go ahead and move to our next item, which is our smart city update 181008. I don't believe we have anything regarding smart cities. So.
Nothing new. I was going to try to push to have a broader update presentation. Wanted to get some time with the new city manager, kind of bring him up to speed on what we've done, and then update the presentation accordingly. I wasn't able to get that done for this meeting, so I'm going to shoot for next meeting. But then the one smart city update that I do have is that and I alluded to this earlier, we do now have our waiver to operate our autonomous shuttle. It is a 6-month waiver. That means the vehicle will operate in what the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration has defined as the most complex route one of these vehicles has ever operated on. So that was their excuse for why it took so long to get it done. We are hustling as quickly as we can to get it on the road. Is because the clock is ticking. That 6 months doesn't start when I first put it out on the road. It started when they issued the waiver. So we hope that within the next couple of weeks that it's out there. We are brushing the dust off of some old plans that we had with UF for a kickoff event, but it's all going to move very quickly. We'll let you guys know about that event as soon as it's scheduled.
Oh, thank you, Chair. We've been talking about the streetlights for quite a long time, and I'm disappointed today that we're not having any information brought back to us regarding that request. So, it's to a point now, Chair, it's like, how many times do we have to keep asking for updates on streetlights, the smart technology? I mean,
I think we've gotten updates. I don't know the most recent one, but if you want to provide us just some
well,
context.
we asked for, where are we on that? Where are we headed? Can we get a map or something to indicate what's going on? I haven't received anything. I don't know if you all received anything.
Yeah, well, now that you mention it, we did receive a presentation a long time ago with some proposals for some initial pilots for some streetlight technology.
It's been a while.
It has been a little while.
It's been a while.
I do know that, just for, because this is, I have looked into this. Originally, we were asking for a certain set of money for what would be a pilot, but we're actually going to be using a lot less than that. So I think initially it was the project started as this giant scope of what, but we didn't really know exactly how we were going to spend that money and where we were going to go. So the next fiscal year, we requested a less capital input from the budget. So I think it was like $6.5 million, and it became like 1.5 or something of that nature. But my understanding is we're still trying to put together a pilot for when we're going to run all these things. But I appreciate the.
Yeah, I just think my recollection was probably a little different. I'm getting older by a minute, so maybe I'm missing something.
Not at all.
Update me.
If I remember correctly, I think this, I don't know if it was answered or not at a meeting, but one of the questions I know I had was on kind of where are they going to be
Yeah, I think
put?
that one was
kind of where. I think I remember staff saying that they were focused on high pedestrian areas, and that's where I wanted to making sure where we're focusing things on, like downtown area. We have tons of pedestrians, a lot of night people, higher crime areas, things like that, and making sure that those are kind of the top priority, and that kind of see a timeline on where do we kind of see ourselves and being able to implement that. I think that may have been.
I think it was along those lines, and that's my concern. As of late, we have been having a lot of criminal activity taking place. Things have been going on in the news, and I'm concerned. We've been asking for this for a while now, and I'm just concerned for security purposes and safety. And just would like to know at what point would I get some information, or will the commission get a map or something to indicate where we are?
We can, so a lot of that information does exist. So there's two pieces to it. And we can set up a time to sit down with you as early as this week or next week, because some of that does exist. GRU is actively replacing the old lights with LED lights, but there's no control nodes. We got authorization. Commissioner Arroyo was right. The amount was reduced and then put into this year's budget, which started October 1st. So we had access to that money then. We're now going through the procurement process. We intend to use the same vendor that GR uses for their AMI. So coordinating with GRU to make sure that it's compatible with whatever they're going to be purchasing with AMI. In terms of where and what we intend to deploy, that is something that we absolutely, that information is ready. So we don't have to wait a month to the next update. We can sit down with you and send out something before the next, we don't have to wait for the next digital access committee meeting, so I guess what I'm saying. So.
That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah.
That's all I'm
Yeah.
asking.
No, that's great, Commissioner.
And I think it would be good to have the presentation just here.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would move that, that we place.
I can do both. I can meet with you
Why don't
next
you
week
do it?
and do it next week, or and do it at the next access committee.
Just an update on, I move that we have an update on our placement of streetlights, going into a timeline of kind of where they're being placed, and what are we creating, or what are we making as priorities for those areas, and then also an update on the actually connecting all the nodes around the city, where those are happening.
And I like to add, this is the second request.
We have to give times, so I think we.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
It was.
Okay,
So what's at the next meeting?
Next week.
Okay.
yeah, very well. Okay, any public comment to that effect? None? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign, seeing none. Okay, so we will receive a smart city streetlights update at our next meeting. In the intermediate time, staff could provide that information to subcommittee. That would be helpful. And that is all for our agenda items. Do we have any members of the public? We do not. Comments from any members? Commissioner?
Thank you. Those are two areas that you both have been interested in, opportunity zones, and I had an opportunity to talk to.
Yeah, an opportunity to talk about.
I did have an opportunity to talk to about opportunity zones with the White House Director for Opportunity Zones last week on talking about there are things that we should be doing that other cities are doing in terms of trying to get more out there. One of them the cities have been doing is creating prospectuses on like those areas and starting to shop those around and actually put them out and market those. So I think that I'll sit down with the city manager and acknowledge that I'll get that information to him, but hopefully that's something that we can do. And it seems like what we need to do is we need to just like, this is what we got, these are the opportunities we have, and then go marketing those out there to the, both locally and then also to the larger nationally and regionally as well. And then also that came out of the rules in October when they released some of those rules, because they kind of finalized everything. They are allowing those, you can use opportunity zone funds and those tax rebates to actually invest in startups now too, and get the same tax benefits from that. So that might be another area, since all of our startups are, the vast majority of them are in opportunity zones, and it also might be a way to get startups to move into our areas that have a lot of startups. So that's another area that I think it's just started. There's only a couple investment funds around the country that are doing that, but that might be something that we could go out there and market, because that is all of our startups are in opportunity zones.
Do you know of any updates with the Opportunity Zone program? Because I know at the end of the fiscal year.
So I did ask that question. So it was just the things are all there. It's like a 5% difference that's there, but there's still 20%. I think it's like that, and then it drops down at 5 years, and then you get half the benefit at 5 years, and then half the benefit, or the full benefit at 10 years if you hold for that period of time.
So that's the only change?
There was, yeah, it was one of the things was gone, which was like 5%, I think, tax credit, but there's still like a 20% or 25%. If I remember correctly, I don't remember exactly.
Thank you for the update.
Yeah, that sounds great.
yeah.
Do you want to bring that as a discussion to the commission? I feel like that would be more.
Yeah.
I'll bring it up. I just want to let you know,
Yeah.
I know both of you have been interested in that area, and I'll get the information to the city manager's office so they can start reaching out and then hopefully start working on some of that stuff.
Okay, great. Well, seeing no further member comment, our next meeting date is February 10th, 2020. Thank you all for your kind attention. We are adjourned.